Hey and horror for all gang, and welcome to another relatively long form video, aka Tom sits on his living room floor, chats to you about films. Now, if you have eyes in your head, you can probably make the assumption, or you saw the thumbnail, that I'm going to be chatting today about the Alien films, and specifically, I wanted to rank them in order of how good they are. Now, like any good ranking list, there is likely to be some controversy, some difference of opinion. Great, I love it. Comment what you think should have been in various places or above or below anything else. I love to hear your thoughts. But today, I'm coming at you with my thoughts. Now, first things first, a few housekeeping rules. I'm going to be recommending, where possible, that you watch the unrated or the director's cut rather than the theatrical versions. I'm going to be pointing out in particular where it makes a difference, but there are some films that are actually surprisingly different between the theatrical and the director's or unrated cuts. So that's something to pay attention to. Number 2, living xenomorphs only. So, whilst there's a xenomorph skull at the end of the, I think, relatively underrated Predator 2, Predator 2 is not on my list. The films that are on this list, so are obviously the original quadrilogy of the Alien films, the 2 AVP films, and yes, there are 2 of them, and the 2 Alien universe expanding Ridley Scott what the fuckerisms. I'm kind of giving some of the tier list away here, but there are 8 films in total on the list. Broadly speaking, they're kind of cut into 3 parts, so numbers 8 to 6 are shit. Numbers 5 and 4, I think, are actually pretty enjoyable. Numbers 3 to 1 are good to great. So we are going to start at the very bottom of the list, and we are going to try and do it in one take. You know, try and do a Kano fire in the booth over here. So, number 8. 8 of 8, the worst of the worst. We have Aliens vs. Predator Requiem. Now, this is the second AVP film, so it's potentially the one that is least well known out of all of the 8 films that we'll be covering today. AVP Requiem, in and of itself, wasn't a bad idea. There was a relatively neutered PG-13-esque AVP film, which obviously will make an appearance later on the list. A lot of people reacted relatively strongly to how neutered it was in terms of the blood, the gore, the violence. So let's make a hyper-gory AVP film, and that's what AVP Requiem was. Apparently, the film is too fucking dark. It is, not seething character or darkness, it's just pitch black. You need to be tooled up like you're going to be storming Osama bin Laden's compound to watch this film. You have to 0 dark 30 your way through this film. The film is already pitch black, set mostly at night, apart from a bit in the very beginning, and then a third of the way through the film, there's a power cut. So it's fucking Vanta black here. You have no source of light at all. And it is so bad that Dead Meat, one of my inspirational channels, when they did their kill count of this film, applied a filter to the film's footage so that the people watching the video on the channel could see what the fuck was going on. And if you have to do that, your film's too fucking dark. It doesn't matter how gory the effects are, or how good the alien effects are, or how interesting some of the kills are, if you can't see what the fuck's going on. So purely by virtue of not knowing what this film contains, apart from a bit of shrieking and slimy goo that reflects what tiny bits of light there are, Alien Requiem is at number 8. Number 7, Alien Covenant. This is a film that is absolutely style over substance. There are some beautiful shots, some incredible looking sequences. There are also some pretty grotesque color palettes and scenes to kind of go alongside, and not in a sort of an eerie, unsettling way, just in a my brother, it's just not a very nice looking film for a lot of it. And it's a real uneven mix of what looks good or not. The main problem with Alien Covenant, really sort of twofold. One, even in the annals of stupid characters, Covenant's humans stand out. I mean, they purely exist to be fodder. And the problem is that these are meant to be, the best of the best, space explorators and things like that. And the ship's captain, he couldn't command his piss into a pot. He's absolutely abysmal. And annoyingly enough, I can't remember the captain's name, but he's played by, an actor that I know and I like and I recognize and could have infused this role with a level of sort of gravitas, but the character itself was written so weakly. The only real standouts in Alien Covenant, to be fair, is a couple of interesting kills and scenes near the start of the film, and Michael Fassbender's David and Walter. There's definitely a bit of a weird interplay between the two, but the dual characters I think were quite interesting, and his performances are very good, even if the characters themselves are not amazing. So, number 7, Alien Covenant. Leads on to number 6, Prometheus. The real question with Prometheus is why? There's the eternal question of what came first, the chicken or the egg. And according to Prometheus, the answer is there was a race of spacefaring engineers who have a biological weapon that's a black goo that mutates a host into a series of proto-chickens and neo-chickens. And then David, who's an android who has a god complex, he wants to create life, and so he deliberately infects some humans, creating, early versions of chickens, chest-bursting chickens, and finally, eventually, our beloved Xeno chickens that we know and love from the chicken franchise. Where do the eggs come from? Where does the queen chicken come from? No one knows. Get the fuck out of here with that. It's complete nonsense. This whole movie is an answer to a question that wasn't asked, it wasn't needed, and it doesn't even answer that question. It's the pinnacle of frustration. This is easily the most frustrating film on this list. I'm tempted to put it as number 8 because it annoys me so much, but I think the film does have redeeming qualities. Again, I think it looks beautiful. The cast is amazing. They do the best they can. They do elevate some of the dumbly written characters into passable characters. It just makes me really wish for Alien Romulus to come along and save us, to be honest with you. So the 3 bad ones: AVP Requiem, Alien Covenant, Prometheus. We're now coming on to the not great but enjoyable ones. Number 5, Alien Resurrection. So obviously it's the first of the OG quadrilogy. It is a film that has some very fun and some also pretty bad elements to it. Overall, I really like the Joss Whedon script. It's a very Joss Whedon script, which, it's not as insufferable as some of his other ones, but it may be too much for some of you. I personally sort of quite enjoyed it. Similar to Alien Covenant, it's really visually mixed. There's real parts that are kind of eerily beautiful, especially of the space station itself, but other parts that are kind of really oddly ugly and muted and greys and browns, and it just doesn't really sort of click together. I think the cast is pretty wasted. I think Michael Wincott, who's an actor that I love him in many films that I've seen him in, I think he's pretty wasted in this film. Sigourney Weaver, she's Ellen Ripley. Like, you can't fault that, but Ellen Ripley's character is very different in this film compared to the others. Doesn't quite work as well for me, but it has the underwater alien sequence. You see the aliens swim, which was great. You have these weird, like, breath door locking mechanisms. It's a real kind of hodgepodge of sort of good and bad ideas. I think the film is fun. It's not great, but it's good fun. It's enjoyable, and therefore it hits number 5. Number 4. This is where the controversy is going to come in. Aliens versus Predator. I'm just going to wait for the barbs, the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune to head my way. This film got a lot of flack, I'll be honest with you. Not without reason, it's not a great film, but I genuinely enjoy watching it. I've watched it several times, and actually I think it is a perfectly enjoyable film. It's not a quality entry into either the Alien or the Predator franchises, but for a film that promised fighting between aliens and predators, it gets that part pretty damn good. The unrated version, I think, is a significant improvement, so that's one definitely where the unrated version is worth a watch instead. The character's forgettable. The style of it is pretty Resident Evil because it had, I think, the same director. Yeah, it's not a great film, but I enjoy it. When the aliens and the predators do get to fighting, it's good fun. There's a couple of cool sequences in there. Yeah, that's number 4. Don't hate me. And now we come on to the final 3. So these are where the films get from good to great. Number 3 is Alien 3. Now, Prometheus aside, this is probably the most frustrating film on this list. I really like Alien 3. I think it is one of the most underrated films I've seen ever. I think it's great. I think it is a couple of steps away from being perfect. I understand why people have a lot of criticism about it. The big criticism is obviously that they controversially kill off a number of very key characters that survived Aliens. In my view, personally, I really appreciate that boldness of that choice, because it leads Ripley's character arc into a less of a maternal role that she had in Aliens and to a lesser extent in Alien. But it's now about Ripley controlling her own destiny. She was completely, she was in cryosleep and unable to have any control, any sort of action that she could do to save the lives of these characters that she'd worked so hard to save in the previous film. She doesn't want that to happen again. If anything's going to happen, it's going to be on her terms, and that really drives her character arc in this film. And I think it's a fucking brilliant choice. Sigourney Weaver does her best acting here as Ripley by far. The autopsy scene with Newt, she is on stunning form. I love the setting. The cast is full of recognizable faces who do a great job. It expands the lore in a lot of really positive ways, I think. The idea that the alien ends up being a slightly different breed because it was hosted by a dog or an ox in the unrated version or the director's cut, I think adds a really sort of a good expansion to the mythos of the creature. The most iconic shot from the film is, it's not a film that has a lot of iconic shots in it, but Alien 3's iconic shot is an iconic Alien film series shot. That was done by Fincher's force of will. The studio didn't want him to film that. He literally just grabbed Sigourney Weaver in a break in filming, went to the set and filmed it, which shows you that the studio had no idea what the fuck they were doing. And it's only by Fincher's force of will that we got a film as good as it was. If their studio stepped back, who knows how good the film would have been. I think it's and I know Fincher hates it, and I know a lot of people hate it and think it's really bad. I'm amazed that it's as good as it is, and I think it's great. I think it's a really good addition to the film. I love that it pairs it back to the more kind of lo-fi, isolated version of the film that you got from Aliens as opposed to Aliens. Alien 3 for me is easily number 3. Number 2 then is either a choice of Alien and Aliens, and it's going to be Aliens for me, the second one, in case you're not getting my plurals. I do want to caveat this by saying that Aliens is the film that I think most benefits from watching the director's cut. I started out by watching the director's cut for Aliens, and then I was at a friend's house and we accidentally put on the theatrical version, and it feels really weirdly muted. For me, a lot of the classic parts of Aliens are only in the director's cut. So in the theatrical version, there's no scene with the sentry guns, which for me is an iconic part of the film. The subplot near the start of the film with Ripley's daughter, cut out. And these things just, if they're in the film, make the film better. So I'd highly recommend that you watch the director's cut. Now, Aliens is bigger, it's more dramatic, it expands the universe, it ties in perfectly to the end of Alien. A wonderful continuation of the character of Ripley, a really, really good continuation of the science and the lore of the universe. I think it is an amazing film. The only real criticism I would have about it, and I notice this most if I watch Alien and Aliens back to back, is that Aliens feels like a far more dated film, not in terms of the effects, but in terms of the themes and the characters. It feels like a film that was made in the 80s, where Alien, you could argue it feels like a film from the 70s, but it feels more ageless. Aliens feels surprisingly dated in its themes and its characters. And in my head, the perfect example is the character of Burke. Always just a greedy corporate man at a time in cinema where greedy corporate men were all the rage. Oh, we need one in our sci-fi action horror film. Now, corporate greed has had a pretty consistent through plot to a lot of the films that we're covering today, but were never personified in the way that Burke did in Aliens. So when we talk about Alien, which, if you can count, is number one, yes, there's the idea that the alien wants to be brought back, but it's a lot more because the characters are dealing through the company, through Mother and potentially Ash as well. You don't have this sort of single sleazy businessman vibe that you get in Burke. But as far as criticisms go, it's a pretty minor one. Aliens is great. I love watching Aliens. It's always worth a watch. Which means that number one is Alien. No shock. One of my favorite films. The OG is the best. I think it's a fantastic, fantastic film. Almost perfection. It feels dirty, it feels nasty, it feels lived in. I think that's what the thing I notice most. Whenever I watch Alien, the ship feels lived in. It feels like these crew have been together for so long, they hate each other's guts. It feels very real. I really, really like the feeling of the ship and the interplay of the crew with each other, how they sort of break off and align with themselves and things like that. I think it's fantastic. The look of the film is so good that when the trailer for Alien Romulus comes out, the positive of the trailer is it looks like Alien. You know, the look of Alien is a classic. The feel of the film, the isolation, the hopelessness, the confusion, the betrayal, the character of Ash, even the bloody cat, Jones the cat, has a pivotal role. The film is cinematic icon after cinematic icon. It is an incredible film, and genuinely one of my life's simple pleasures is just to sit down and watch Alien again. It is a film that I could watch forever. I never get bored with it. There's always something I enjoy when I watch Alien, and it wasn't even close. Alien is by far number one. It's head and shoulders, even above Aliens. It is just the best. And Alien and Aliens are the only two films on this list that I would say are horror for all. If you haven't seen either, watch them both, because they are both great. Yes, they are scary. Yes, they are intense, but you would have seen far scarier, far more intense and violent things in pretty much any TV show. If you've watched Game of Thrones or Chernobyl or anything like that, you would have seen worse things than what are in Alien and Aliens. So yeah, don't be scared of watching them. They are absolutely worth it. Stone cold classics of the genre. And that is that. So thank you very much for staying with me, hopefully until this point. I'm off to boil this motherfucker and rest my voice. And yeah, have a great day. Ciao, ciao.